The Indianapolis Colts suffered quite a blow to the offense yesterday as Josh Downs suffered a high ankle sprain. So, what's the latest on Downs and the rest of the Colts from training camp? And what should we be watching when the Colts take on the Broncos this weekend? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my wonderful co-host and colleague at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, the Colts, for the most part, have avoided serious injury at training camp to their big time players, minus Samson Ebukam tearing his Achilles. And I think what is the worst part about this Josh Downs high ankle sprain, which really it's a dodged bullet. But the thing is, the whole thing could have been totally avoided. And now the Colts are looking at missing probably one of their best, if not the best offensive player they had in training camp performance-wise. Now he's in jeopardy for the first couple of weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, and these things happen in training camp, but when you look at the context of it, kind of like Steichen said, it wasn't supposed to be contact. It wasn't supposed to be going down to the ground. So we'll talk a little bit more about it, but huge blow. 4 to 6 weeks is a long time, especially when you talk about the fact that the regular season starts in basically a month. So, I mean, you're talking about potentially the first 2 weeks of the regular season here. So just hoping Josh Downs recovers quickly, but we'll dive a little more into it here in the episode, along with other things happening in training camp and beyond.
Exactly. We're going to talk tonight about Josh Downs and that injury, what the latest is, what we've all been hearing behind the scenes about what the outlook looks on that injury, and the rest of what's going on at Colts training camp. There's only been one other practice since we last talked to you guys on Tuesday night, so we'll fill you in on everything on that. And the Colts will kick off the preseason this weekend against the Denver Broncos. So while it is preseason, the wins and losses do not matter. There's still context within the game that absolutely does matter. So we'll talk about what to watch for and then catch you up on all the latest Colts news and rumors. I already see NFL Nerd in the chat. He's got a fantastic question there. We're going to talk about that in our first segment. So I'll put it up on the screen when we do talk about that in our first segment. Stats Matt, let's go. We got football on and we see horseshoes on the field this weekend. Yes, I think the Patriots and it's the Panthers are currently playing right now on NFL Network,
a
preseason matchup. Hey, Drake May, that's what I'm going to be tuning into after we are done here. Sean Contwright saying, hey guys, Cross should get a fine from the team. Yes, Nick Cross has definitely been in the news, and my timeline has been, and my mentions have been blowing up all day from the story that I wrote about the Nick Cross and Josh Downs situation. But before we do that, Lions and Giants are on too, as Stats Matt said. But make sure you go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on X. Yikes, do not do that. Go follow at Colts on _SI on X.
I didn't even stop you. I was like, that sounds right.
Every time, Drake. I'll get it right eventually, guys. At Colts on _SI on X. And then go subscribe to us on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night. And guys, we might be adding some more podcasts to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel this fall. Well, we've got some stuff potentially cooking from some of our other colleagues at Horseshoe Huddle. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the action. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, let's dive right into it. And we're going to start out with the Josh Downs injury. Like I said in the opener, it is a high ankle sprain for the second-year Colts wide receiver. Ian Rappaport, along with Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, both reporting that it looks like the timetable for Josh Downs is going to be 4 to 6 weeks that he will miss. Ian Rappaport also said, but that the Colts are optimistic that Josh Downs is going to be on the shorter end of that timetable. So it's still up in the air whether Josh Downs plays week 1 against the Houston Texans. There is a real possibility that Downs could come back in time to play against the Texans. But again, with a high ankle sprain, you really don't want to push it, because that's the type of injury that if you do push it, It's something that can be re-injured pretty easily, and it's an injury that can linger throughout the season. So the Colts will definitely have to be smart about that. But uh, how the injury occurred to Josh Downs, that has been the real story over the past 36 hours. So yesterday, it was the start of the 7-on-7 period. The Colts always start out with the same play in the 7-on-7 period. Usually it's a 3-yard out to Josh Downs, Michael Pittman Jr., just to kind of get things going. This time it was Josh Downs. Richardson threw it on a rope. Josh Downs caught it, and it was Nick Cross who pulled down Josh Downs for a tackle. Now, guys, the Colts were in pads yesterday, but that doesn't really matter because in 7-on-7 and even in 11-on-11, the Colts haven't held a live tackling session all training camp. They're trying to keep the hits to a minimum. They're trying to keep the injuries to a minimum. That was the case yesterday as well. This was not a live tackling period. 7-on-7 is really more designed for the offense to try to get the timing down. Yes, the defense is focusing in on more zone coverages most of the time, a lot of man coverage too, but it's not a drill where you're trying to tackle the opponent, a simple two-hand touch really, or act like you're going to wrap up the ball carrier. But instead, Nick Cross takes Josh Downs and pulls him down to the ground. His ankle gets kind of wrapped up underneath him, and it ends up being a high ankle sprain. Really looked a lot worse than it actually is. Josh Downs at the time that he was injured could hardly put any weight on that leg, which really sent some scares throughout the crowd there at Westfield. Shane Steichen obviously not very pleased, but Drake, it's just and this was kind of the point of my whole piece. If you haven't read the piece, please go to horseshoehuddle.com, check out my piece that I wrote on Nick Cross. The biggest qualm I guess I have with this is, mistakes do happen. The players make mistakes. Sometimes you cross the line a little bit, which is what Nick Cross did. Do I think Nick Cross intentionally meant to hurt Josh Downs? No, absolutely not. But yesterday, Nick Cross spoke to the media, and the media gave him multiple chances to kind of explain himself, take some accountability for that. And I'm not saying that he owes the media an explanation. I don't think that the media is holier than thou by any means. I'm always a huge critic of the media, sports and non-sports. But Nick Cross, if you watch the video of his presser yesterday, did not want anything to do with the accountability. Just kept saying, we're competing. It's football. Didn't look like he was even a little bit sorry about what happened to Josh Downs. And to me, that just rubbed me the wrong way because this is one of your teammates, and I know you're competing and wanting to and going for that starting role, but to not even show a little bit of remorse and a little bit of accountability, something that's preached by the coaches, by Shane Steichen and the leaders on this team, that just doesn't sit right. And I don't think it sat right with the coaches for the Colts either yesterday.
Yeah, and look, when you look at Nick Cross's situation, obviously there's a chance that his starting job is on the line, and there's a chance that all he's hearing, and he might look a little too much into the headlines that are being written about him, which I think that coaches, can't say this for sure, but I'm pretty confident all 32 NFL coaches say, please don't read the headlines. I think that that's what they all try to preach. And so I think that Cross was frustrated. I think the whole Justin Simmons thing, maybe that's got him a little bit amped up, but to take the teammate down, he knew what he was doing, and then you got to put it on Josh Downs' side of things. He caught that ball expecting to not be taken down.
Exactly.
And that can change everything about how you approach the game, because when you catch a ball in live action, you are ready for a hit, unless, of course, you're trusting your quarterback to put it in a position where you can just catch and go. But, I mean, yeah, it sucks. I think Nick Cross needs to, at some point, say something that he hopes Josh Downs is okay. That's all he's got to say. Just something to make everyone go, okay, the guy feels sorry. That's all that they're looking for. I think that's all the media was looking for. Because like you said, they threw him a couple lines, man, in very, fish-filled waters, and he just kind of just dismissed it as it's competition. Well, it's not. There's rules to the 7-on-7 and 11-on-11s right now.
Exactly. Want to give a shout out to Spooks Hill Joe with the $10
Whoa,
super sticker,
the
getting us
heater.
off to a hot start tonight. Spooks Hill Joe, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support, for the super sticker. It means the world to Drake and I. And thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying the show with us tonight. But yeah, Drake, that's kind of my point exactly. I don't think my point in all this, and when I wrote about this for this morning, I'm not asking Nick Cross to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness from the
Right.
Colts fan base, from the media. That's not it. But basically, it would have been nice for Nick Cross to come out and say, "Hey, I crossed the line. I effed up. I own up to it. I really hope Josh Downs is okay. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to be better next time." None of that. None of that whatsoever. To me, that just shows just shows immaturity, and it shows a kind of it just doesn't seem like he is when you give off that kind of vibe that you're a team player. I know he's probably under a lot of stress. He's under a lot of pressure right now to win that starting job and to keep it. But at the same time, you can't let it affect your demeanor so much, or to make you go out there and make those crucial mistakes that are going to hurt the team. This is practice after all, and I'm telling you, Nick Cross, nobody, doesn't matter if it was a live tackle period or not, no one's going to be impressed with you dragging down Josh Downs after a 3-yard completion. I can tell you that right now. But let's move on from that, Drake. Let's kind of talk about what it means, what this Josh Downs injury means. And this is kind of where I want to get to NFL Nerd's question, because it's a really good question. He says, what will we see more of? Pittman in the slot with Pierce and Mitchell wide, or rotate Mitchell and Pierce with Pittman out wide and Gould in the slot? So, Drake, I want to start out with you. What do you think this Colts offense is going to look like, and how do you think they're going to adapt with the loss of Josh Downs? Obviously, it's probably going to be mostly just this month and into the preseason. It's not going to last, you would think, very long into the regular season, if at all. But if it does, what do you think this offense is going to look like, and how do you think they are going to adjust with Josh Downs being on the sidelines?
I think that you're going to see our own Zach Hicks kind of wrote about Anthony Gould getting a potential boost in playing time. I think you're going to see that because I think that when we hear Anthony Gould's name, you automatically think kick returner, special teamer. That's fair. All right. But the guy, I'm telling you, he is like trying to tackle a gnat. Okay. If he gets out in the open field, he's incredibly fast and he's gone before you know it. So he can be an intriguing option for Steichen. I think you're going to see potentially a little bit more of maybe A.D. Mitchell getting a little bit of slot work, or you'll see something where there's maybe just him and he's filling in for Pierce on the outside. I think you're going to see a lot more of Gould on the in the slot, though, because Doolin, outside guy. A.D. Mitchell, he can play the slot, but probably you want him more on that outside role. Pierce is definitely an outside guy, and I think Pittman can play the slot, but you prefer him to be on the outside. That's why this injury really sucks, is because they do have a backup slot receiver, but man, to have Downs and Gould both healthy would be very much preferable to what's going down right now.
Yeah, and I think you are hitting on something, because when Downs went down yesterday, Anthony Gould was the one that stepped in and took the majority of those snaps in the slot.
Yep.
But I also want to kind of touch on something that Shane Steichen said yesterday real quick, because he did this was asked to him as well. Will we see Gould get more? And of course he said yes. I mean, he will be a guy that we'll rely upon, but it's not the only guy that we're going to rely upon. We have seen over the years, even last season, Michael Pittman Jr. playing that big slot role. He can certainly do that, be that possession guy over the middle. And I think that can open up some opportunities where you can have Pittman in the slot. You could have A.D. Mitchell playing the Z wide receiver spot because of his route running and his explosiveness. You can have Alec Pierce in that X wide receiver spot. I think that's definitely a combination that we will see on the field. Obviously, Anthony Gould out there in the slot is a natural fit. I also think the tight ends kind of fit into this, Drake. Kylan Granson, the perfect F move, kind of slot tight end wide receiver hybrid right there at about 6'3". Kylan Granson, Will Mallory is going to I think have an impact on this. This also may be the way that Jelani Woods finally sneaks out and gets some reps with that first team offense as well, because right now Jelani Woods still a no-show in camp, primarily with that second team. So in the end, I think it's going to be a combination of things. And I think if this goes multiple games into the regular season, it's really just going to be based on matchup, where the Colts play the Texans. Week 2, it's against Green Bay. Week 3, I think it is Jacksonville. I don't even remember the Colts schedule here of who they end up facing in week 3. The Bears.
We're
the Bears,
too busy talking about Josh Downs and Nick Cross to worry about the schedule, bud.
The Bears, but I think it's going to be matchup based of who's in there with the slot, and I think it's going to end up being a variety of different options, not just Anthony Gould, even though I do think Anthony Gould will be the primary option there in the slot.
Yeah, and it's really a nice plug and play type of situation, because he's kind of built similar to Downs, kind of has similar traits to what Downs has. But again, you just hope that the last week, because I think there's a week in between. I think it's September 2nd. There's nothing, and then there's the regular season football. So you hope that nice little buffer gives him just extra time, and that's when you hear he's ready to suit up, even if it's in like a kind of a split role, just to get him back into the swing of things. Because like you said, remember JT's injury, everybody, with that high ankle sprain. You do not want to mess around with this, because if you do, it will become so much worse, and it'll be something that might nag him the rest of his career.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to training camp and kind of talk about yesterday's practice, Drake. And well, of course, who do we always start out with? Anthony Richardson, talking about the quarterback position. Anthony Richardson had a pretty efficient day yesterday. I think he was 10 of 16, no touchdowns, no interceptions yesterday in camp. Altogether, he is now, I think we're through 9 practices. Anthony Richardson in 11 on 11s is 60 for 93, which is 65% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And what we're seeing here, Drake, is not only just yesterday, but what we've consistently seen throughout camp is the accuracy on those short throws by Anthony Richardson has really been on point. And I think this is one of the reasons why the deep ball has been such an emphasis, is because the Colts really feel like their short game, they've got it down. Doesn't mean they don't practice it. There's certainly a lot of short completions that happen in practice. You guys just may not hear about it because we're not reporting on every single play. That's literally impossible to do, because then our face would be in our phones the entire time. But the short completions and the stuff is there, which is really good to see. And I think, one of the things that was a big question mark for Anthony Richardson coming out was his short accuracy. And so far, it's been really, really good. The mechanics especially have been really, really good there. The highlight for Anthony Richardson yesterday was about a 30-yard completion to Michael Pittman down the left sideline. It was dropped in perfectly over Juju Brents and right in between Brents and Julian Blackmon coming over there. And it was really good coverage by Juju Brents. He was up in Pittman's face. It was just a better throw and catch by Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman. So not a highlight day of it by any means with Anthony Richardson, but a really solid and an efficient day out of Anthony Richardson, who again is just continuing to stack good days. Some days are obviously better than others, and some days he does struggle a little bit, but overall Anthony Richardson, Drake, in my opinion, from everything I've seen, he's had a really, really good training camp.
Yeah, and you just don't want to see, an exorbitant amount of turnovers or just practices that are really great and then really absolutely dirt awful. Like where, you're not seeing consistent improvements, consistent development, or with certain things just to stay at a plateau, and I think that you're seeing the completion percentage is great where it needs to be. Some of those throws, like Andrew mentioned in our previous episode, there's certain practices where they're focusing on deep shots. They're focusing on taking those shots down the field to see what can be done, with some of those explosive plays and attempts. And so those aren't going to always be high percentage. So I think that where the high percentage throws need to happen, Richardson's nailing those. And then he's doing, I think, what you should expect on the deep passes, which is finding them. And there's been some 50-50 balls with guys like Alec Pierce, but I think that A.D. Mitchell's really impressed, and a couple others have as well. So really, I'm right there with you, man. I think Richardson looks up to par, up to speed, and he's ready for the regular season.
Yeah, here's a interesting point the stats Matt brings up, and I think it's a good to talk about. Another thing with Anthony Richardson that I saw in that video the team put out was the one throw corrections, which seemed to be something he's been good at. So if you're not sure what stats Matt is talking about, the Colts released another episode of Behind the Colts, and it's a 25-minute video basically of the Colts following Anthony Richardson throughout his rehab process over the off season and into training camp, really talking with his family. But what Stats Matt is talking about is when Richardson was down in Jacksonville this offseason working with Will Hewlett, his private quarterback coach, who also works with Brock Purdy, works with Caleb Williams, one of the best private quarterback coaches out there. They really focused in on those one throw corrections, where if Anthony misses on a throw, they correct it right away, and then the very next throw, Anthony makes those corrections to have a very good throw. And it's something that Hewlett said that Anthony is one of the brightest quarterbacks and that he works with. And he's one of the quarterbacks that can do that the easiest. And what I mean by that is it seems like anytime that Richardson does make a mistake, he doesn't make that mistake again. He can quickly dissect what he did wrong on that and make the corrections in real time. And we've already seen that a few times in training camp, Drake, where he has an underthrow or he has a throw where he ends up sailing the football a little bit high. Then he comes back on the next throw, and usually that is fixed. So the ability to do that is very interesting, and I think it's going to really help Anthony Richardson throughout the season, and it's something to definitely watch for throughout the regular season as well. How can Anthony Richardson adjust on the fly mid-game, and how successful can he be in doing that? I think that's going to help dictate a lot of the success for not only Richardson but this Colts offense.
Yeah, and that's one of the best things you can have. It's one of the best skills. And I might even consider it innate when you can just like automatically go, that was wrong, let's correct it. And it doesn't happen a second time. And it's at a position where if that happens a second time, you're just a couple more times away from being benched potentially. Or like, you're being called a bust, or, oh man, he's just too experienced. They got the raw guy, So Richardson is really doing fantastic things, but I love to hear that he's making improvements when he makes mistakes. That is crucial because like we talk about all the time with a guy as young as him, and when it's all about him and his development, you don't want him making mistakes like that. So
I agree. On the defensive side of the football yesterday, we saw with Tyquan Lewis out yesterday at practice, Latu was the one that took really almost all of the snaps with the first team offense at that Leo spot. Drake, he's getting more and more snaps. I know Lewis was out, but Dio Odangbo was back. Odangbo ran primarily with the twos yesterday, and it was Latu and Pay as the starting defensive ends. And again, Latu was impressive. I mean, he was putting pressure on Anthony Richardson. He was getting back there to the quarterback. Those battles between Latu and Bernhard Raimann have been fantastic to watch all throughout camp, and you could tell that each one is making the other one better, because Latu may beat Raimann at times, but then if Latu goes back to that move, Raimann stymies him. So it's a fun chess match to watch. It almost reminds me, and I'm not comparing Bernhard Raimann and Latu to these guys. They have a long way to go before they reach this level. But Drake, it reminds me of the mid 2000s, or really not the mid 2000s, just the entire 2000s, when you're watching Tarek Glenn battle up against Dwight Freeney every single day in practice. Those two perennial Pro Bowlers, Dwight Freeney and All Pro, making each other better every single practice. And I think the Colts are hoping that that's going to be Raimann and Latu for years to come. But getting back to Latu, again, the more reps he's getting with the ones, Drake, I'd be willing to bet money that at this point that Latu starts week 1. I think I'm going to go all in on that bet, because the way he is trending, I just don't see how you can keep him off the field and not give him the starting spot, because he's earned it so far.
Look, I spent a crap ton of money on this jersey for a reason. Okay. and it's because he's going to start. All right, look, it's absolutely crushing, and it still hurts my soul that Samson Ebukam tore his Achilles. All right, because I was really pumped to see how they were going to kind of integrate him and Latu into different sets, but it really looks like right now you've got yourself your bona fide starting two. I mean, it kind of seems that way because they really kind of accompany each other well. I think that Latu's got the pass rushing aspect locked down. He can get a little bit better in run defense, but he's good enough. Okay, he's not getting blown away and just getting ran by all these running backs. And then on the other end, you've got the solid run defender in Kwity Paye, who is showing more prowess as a pass rusher in camp. So I think that both those guys, they're intriguing as a starting duo, and it's just very, very awesome to think about the oncoming seasons, right, where Latu grows with Ryman, and they just continue to just sharpen each other as professional athletes. So we'll see how that goes down, but boy, oh boy, let's talk about the here and now, and that's Latu's rookie season so far. He looks like he is ready to make anybody who threw down a bet for him to win Defensive Player of the Year for a rookie. He's looking like he's going to make them potentially some money in the upcoming season.
And one more guy on the defensive side of the football, Drake, that has been making waves, or I guess maybe the best way to say this is he hasn't been making waves, but instead he's just performing steadily and at a high level, and that's Juju Brents. You guys, really, we haven't talked about Juju Brents throughout training camp, and that's kind of what you want to hear about your starting corner, your starting outside cornerback, because if we're talking about Juju Brents a lot, that usually means that the offense is either making a lot of plays on him or he's hurt, something bad. But Juju Brents is steadily putting together a really good camp. He hasn't missed a practice. He's been able to stay healthy. He's taken pretty much every single first team rep that is out there for him, and that has been crucial. Chris Ballard and the Colts have said all off season long that Juju Brents, all he needs to do is just stay healthy and get those reps, and that's what he is doing so far. He's had a quiet camp per se, not many like interceptions or forced turnovers, but he's been really solid in coverage, both in man and in zone. Like I said, he had the opportunity yesterday. He was in really good coverage on Michael Pittman. It was just a better throw and catch. But yesterday, things that we didn't talk about is Juju Brents also had a couple of really nice pass breakups throughout the day in those 11-on-11 sessions. So, Drake, no news is good news, in my opinion, with Juju Brents. He's out there, he's learning, he's staying healthy, and so far he's looking like he's not only embracing that starting role, but he's really coming into his own as a starter for the Colts.
Yeah, and I actually like what Let's Go Colts said down there. Is it's just good to see him on the field, to stay on the field, because he's got the athleticism, the attributes, and everything to continue to grow as a solid zone corner and press corner in Gus Bradley's scheme, especially. So just staying out there, dude, because I think, God, didn't he have like a quad injury? Didn't he have like a wrist injury? He had he had a real awkward 9 games in the season where he played like the first chunk of his 9 games, like 5 games at the front of the season, missed the entire middle, and then had to try to rebound at the end of the season. So I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to do this year. And like you said, you haven't heard, oh my gosh, Juju Brents with, 4 interceptions over 5 practices, but it's solid football. He's accompanying Jalen Jones well in coverage. I mean, he's just looking good, and that's what you want to hear.
Now, when the games do start to matter, you're going to want to see Juju Brents create some turnovers. He had one. Oh, yeah. He had a forced fumble last year, and then I think he also had an interception last year. So you do want to see him continue to force turnovers. But so far in training camp, so good for Juju Brents. So that was the highlights from practice yesterday. The Colts will have one more practice tomorrow before they take the field on Sunday against the Denver Broncos. Drake will be there at training camp tomorrow at Westfield. So make sure you're following the only at D Walster Drake for all the updates from Colts camp. But let's talk about the action going down on Sunday. Drake, the Colts are 1-point underdogs to the Denver Broncos. Had to put the betting line in there for all of you degenerates and sickos out there that love to bet on preseason football. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but hey, whatever makes you money out there. If you can make money on preseason football, Go for it. I would take the under in a lot of cases. But yeah, Drake, Colts open up the preseason against the Denver Broncos. We haven't heard exactly yet how much the starters are going to play. Shane Steichen will be telling us all about that tomorrow. My guess would be it's probably going to be, last year it was, I think, the first 3 series is what the starters played. I would probably say it's going to be similar to that. The first 3 series, probably a quarter, is what you're going to see out of the Colts starters on Sunday. But as we look ahead to this, and again, wins and losses do not matter in the preseason, but you can still glean a lot from the various position battles that are going on, the development of some guys that you're specifically looking at. So Drake, whether it's a player, whether it's a position battle, whatever, what are 3 things that you are looking forward to see, or that you're going to have your eyes on when the Colts kick off against the Broncos at 1:00 Eastern on Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday?
So I want to see how the defensive backs, at least, and if they do start their front guys, I want to see how they're going to handle Cortland Sutton. Because you're looking at a guy that I think is a legitimate number 1 receiver. I think that Sean Payton has a lot of different ways that he's going to implement him this season. But then they've still got Marvin Mims, they've still got Tim Patrick, they've still got Troy Franklin, who I know that there were a couple times we were like, he would be great looking in a Colts uniform. So there's a lot of intrigue there. I also want to see how, because we're probably not going to see any Jonathan Taylor. So I think that it's going to be cool to see some Evan Hall. I think it's going to be cool to see some Trey Sermon. Let's see what goes on there. How does Tyler Goodson factor into things? And then I think, this is an interesting one. I want to see how these backup wide receivers play, because they might get called upon. I mean, we're already seeing it happen in real time. There's a chance the first 2 weeks of the regular season you could have Anthony Gold out there in place of Josh Downs, or at least something like that. So I want to see how the depth receivers play, because if they need to get called upon, you really want them to at least be able to be serviceable for a game or two and not just complete duds.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that's an underrated battle that while we've talked about it here on the show, maybe isn't getting much talk elsewhere, or amongst Colts fans out there. So
yeah,
definitely an interesting battle to watch. I think obviously for me, the primary position battle that I'm going to be watching is that X wide receiver spot. Alec Pierce, Adonai Mitchell, they've been splitting reps all camp. Who's going to go out there and perform better in an actual live game scenario? Alec Pierce, obviously going into year 3, he's been there, done that. And Adonai Mitchell is really kind of having his first taste of the NFL going up against another team. So I think that's going to be interesting. And what's going to also be interesting is how the Colts kind of use that rotation. Is it where Pierce goes out there and plays a whole series, then Mitchell, then Pierce, or are they going to switch them out throughout the series, where Pierce plays a couple plays that is in certain packages and Mitchell is in certain other packages? That's definitely going to be interesting as well. Another thing to look at, and again, to me, it's a position battle. Free safety. We all know that as of right now, Nick Cross is still the starter at free safety, but he hasn't been the only one that has gotten reps. Ronnie Harrison Jr., who has primarily played strong safety, but he's still in the mix for that. Rodney Thomas II as well. And then not only the free safety battle, but are they going to make Nick Cross play more strong safety, get down in the box, and have Julian Blackmon play more free safety? That's something that's kind of intertwined with that. And then finally for me is the tight end rotation. That tight end rotation where, as of right now, it's been throughout most of camp, it's been easily Kylan Granson and Mo Alley Cox are the top 2 tight ends. The tight ends that are running primarily with the second team have been Drew Ogletree and Jelani Woods. how strict is that rotation? Like, are we
Yeah.
going to see Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree get more run with the ones now that we're not just in training camp and that we're actually in the games? Or are we not going to see Jelani Woods and Drew Ogletree really until Joe Flacco comes into the game and we're seeing that second unit? Because if that's the case and we don't see those guys until the second unit comes in, I think that spells really bad news for Woods and for Ogletree. But if they're still getting rotated in there with the first team, getting live reps with Anthony Richardson and the rest of the crew, then I can think you can kind of see that it's going to be a more tight end committee approach. But if they're just getting reps with that second team, I think that just tells you a lot about what the Colts think of their tight end room as a whole and who they think they're going to be relying upon the most throughout the season.
Yeah, and it's still probably the most ambiguous position on the entire roster, because you didn't even mention Will Mallory. I know he's had some injuries, but holy cow. So the fact that Jelani Woods is running with the twos and Ogletree is as well. I think at one point, didn't we say that they were probably going to be the starters and maybe Kylan Granson would be the move guy and Mo would be the red zone blocker. I mean, holy cow, what a ridiculous position. So that is something I wish I would have said now, because that is something to absolutely watch. And like Andrew said, watch when Woods gets put in. That is a big indicator of where they think he's at least right now.
Yeah, and because Will Mallory has had a hamstring injury for a while now, it gives more opportunities for Woods and Ogletree, because Mallory's not going to be out there on Sunday. So Woods and Ogletree need to take advantage of these opportunities and show that they should even be considered in this tight end battle. Let's go to the chat to see what people are wanting to watch here on Sunday. We'll start out with our good friend Wyatt Law. Wyatt Law asks, or he says, AR needs to play at least one series, got to knock off some rust and get the feel for game day again. So the starters on offense for a series, then head to the Gatorade cooler with caps on backwards. Wyatt, I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that, especially since they didn't have any joint practices. I would expect next weekend's game against the Arizona Cardinals, you probably aren't going to see starters. The starters are going to get all the reps in those joint practices, and the game is going to be where the reserves kind of get their time to shine. But I would say quarter and a half, 2 to 3, I would say 3 series usually at most, probably 2 to 3, kind of depending on how long the series goes and how successful they are on those series. It's going to give Shane Steichen a good gauge of where they're at. So I would expect the starters to play a decent amount on Sunday. Stats Matt saying that he's going to be watching the DB room, good choice, the tight end room, good choice, and then the backup offensive line, because rarely do offensive lines remain 100% intact all season long. And that's a very good point. Drake, we're talking about behind the starting five that we know are set in stone, that swing tackle battle, Matt Gonsalves, Blake Freeland, who have been kind of rotating it with the second team, where one practice it'll be, like I said, Freeland at left tackle, Gonsalves at right, and then the next practice they'll switch things up. That's definitely a battle to watch, with Wesley French going on IR, Danny Pinter, Tanner Bortolini, those guys in the mix there in the interior. How do they show out and play? Is there going to be a surprise player on the interior of the offensive line? I think that's probably a sneaky good battle to watch. And last year, how we were talking about how bad Arlington Hambright looked in those preseason matchups. Definitely there's some battles and good competition to make the roster on the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, and look, like Stats Matt said, and I love the fact that he put that out there, is that's why it was so good that the Colts went out and got Gonsalves and then back-to-back went and got Bortolini, is because you want to really get, especially if you feel like they can start, you want to get some rookies like that, and then you want to pepper in some depth pieces. That's why Wesley French that's a big loss, because he played meaningful snaps last year. I think he had over 200 snaps, played at center as a starter. So we'll see. But yeah, like you said, I think that's a really big one to watch as well, because last year there were a few guys you were like, going into those preseason games, you're like, okay, they're going to be solid depth pieces. And, kind of akin to Arlington Hambright, you're like, wow, never mind. I hope that guy never has to see the field. And it's no offense. It's just, you don't want your quarterback to get his head taken off,
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be a fun battle to watch. Lex Go Colts says, I want to see our linebackers, how they do in pass coverage over the middle, an area that the
Good
Colts
point.
need to improve on this year. Yeah, definitely a good point. We talked about it on Tuesday, how EJ Speed, it seems like in practice, has definitely upped his game in pass coverage. He's made multiple plays, including a really nice play on Monday where he ran down Josh Downs and was able to deflect the ball away at the very last second. And if EJ Speed wasn't there, it was going to end up being about a 35-yard touchdown from Richardson to Downs. So definitely an area that the Colts linebackers need to improve on. Since Jalen Carlisle has been out for over a week now with a hip injury, I don't think Jalen Carlisle is going to play on Sunday, which is unfortunate. The guy that the Colts drafted to really bolster the pass coverage with their linebacking corps is not going to be out there. Hopefully he's able to get out there at some point in the preseason. But it is a good point, because a lot of the teams last year that this Colts defense faced really tore them up over the middle.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why, now you've got an opportunity for a guy like Saguna to step up and potentially show some coverage, prowess, because he had a good opportunity last season. I think he played an entire game. So, yeah, I think that both Franklin and Speed could improve in coverage, but we've definitely seen it, I think, more from EJ Speed than Zaire, at least in training camp so far.
Yeah, definitely. NFL Nerd, I'm curious how much Joe Flacco will play, because I think that'll impact how the wide receivers look. And NFL Nerd, I think probably what you'll see is Anthony Richardson, again, 2 to 3 series out of the starters. Joe Flacco will come in and play another 2 to 3, take the Colts to halftime, I would say. And then after halftime, you're probably going to see Sam Ellinger, Keaton Slovis, maybe Jason Bean. We'll see. Jason Bean is a solid 5th on that quarterback depth chart. So I don't know how much action he will actually receive, but I would say that Joe Flacco probably comes in after Anthony Richardson. Whenever that's done, we know what you're going to get out of Joe Flacco, and he's going to end up taking you to around halftime. I think that's a safe bet for what Flacco will do on Sunday. And Stats Matt, to kind of follow that up, I'm also curious how much AR and Flacco even play. Say those two are combined, done before halftime. 3 other QBs could be done by the end of the first quarter even. So definitely we'll have to pay attention to see how much the quarterbacks do play. Rich Wheeler agrees with Stats Matt. The secondary depth, offensive line depth there, and then who separates at tight end. Definitely something to watch at tight end. Greg Eggleston saying, I want to see how we stretch the field on offense, and if that pays off in the running game. So Greg, I will tell you that I'm sure there will be some shots in this game, but the Colts are going to keep their offense very, very vanilla. They do not want to give up any tape, any secrets, really play their hand about what they're going to do in the regular season. So it's going to be a lot of very vanilla plays out of this offense. That's how Shane Steichen wants it to look. Shane Steichen, as we all know, always trying to gain a competitive edge and keep things very close to the chest. He's going to be especially close to the chest with how this offense plays. So if we don't see a lot of explosiveness from the offense on Sunday, I wouldn't be too worried about it, because again, the Colts aren't going to show their hand and really show what their game plan is for the regular season at this point. So, and it like Wyatt Law says, offensive play calling will be vanilla. Just time to see how the depth prospects hold up against different jerseys. So regardless, it's going to be fun just to see the Colts go up against another team on Sunday, and the new look for Lucas Oil Stadium, the new turf, the new words, the new look there on the field. It's just going to be fun to be back in that atmosphere in Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. And guys, I will be at the game, covering the game from Lucas Oil Stadium, but make sure after the game, go over to the Bleacher Report app, because our own Drake Wally is going to be giving his live reaction. Did you forget? Did you forget that you were doing that?
No, I was just like zoned into Andrew Moore's going to be At the game.
Yep,
Man.
I'm going to be at the game, but Drake Wally is going to be giving live analysis directly after the game on the Bleacher Report app. So make sure you tune in, give Drake a shout out. Yeah, stats, Matt. Drake acted surprised. Now, we've known about this for a while, but Drake is going to be live on the Bleacher Report app. So make sure you tune in directly after the game and enter the chat to talk with Drake about what just transpired at the Colts when the Colts took on the Broncos. So let's run through the injury report real quick because we do have a couple injuries to update you guys on. Obviously, Raekwon Davis still on the NFI list. I'm not sure how close he is to returning, but I know as soon as he is able to return, the Colts want to get him out there on the field. So a guy that did return to practice was Dio Odangbo, returned to practice on Wednesday and was a full participant. Didn't need really any ramp-up period, so really good to see Dio Odangbo back there with the defensive line, Drake, because, again, with Samson Ebukam out, he figures to really play a part in that rotation and get some more snaps because of Ebukam's injury.
Yeah, and Dio's got I think he's got some intrigue, especially with Charlie Partridge. I know somebody in the chat earlier said, don't forget Charlie Partridge. It's been awesome to see him kind of work with the defensive front as well, and it's just good to see Dio returning too.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunate injury, though, or unfortunate injury news is that mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Wesley French was placed on injured reserve on Wednesday. Reported on Monday that he had to be carted off the field with that ankle injury. So unfortunately, his season is over, which just means Tanner Bortolini, Danny Pinter, those guys in the interior, they've got to step up, and it gives them maybe Danny Pinter an opportunity to sneak onto the roster with Wesley French not able to go this season. Other guys that missed practice on Monday and then again on Wednesday. Tyquan Lewis was out on Wednesday. Ashton Doolin, Jalen Carlisle, and Will Mallory have missed the past week or so with hip and hamstring injuries, respectively. And then linebacker Liam Anderson was also not out there. So Tyquan Lewis and Ashton Doolin were new to the list. Shane Steichen didn't really talk about them yesterday, so we'll see if we can get some updates tomorrow or if any of these guys return to practice. But so far, again, outside of Samson Ebukam and Wesley French and then Josh Downs, there really hasn't been too serious of injuries for the Colts this summer anyway, knock on wood.
Yeah, and the Josh Downs injury is still kind of up for debate on how long that's even going to be. So, I think that so far they've had a relatively, injury-free type of off season, but it really sucks for Wesley French because, like I said, I think that they're very secure with their center depth. But man, he did play meaningful snaps, and he was okay when he filled in for Ryan Kelly.
Exactly. He really was. So let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors before we get everyone out of here to enjoy the rest of their Thursday night. And guys, we have an update on Justin Simmons. So Justin Simmons visited the New Orleans Saints yesterday, was in New Orleans for most of the day, had dinner with the Saints, did not stay in New Orleans or did not ink a deal with the Saints before he departed town this morning. But the Justin Simmons tour is stats masses don't even bring up Simmons. But as the Justin Simmons tour is starting, he's taking visits places. As far as the Colts are concerned, I don't know of any pending visit right now. Doesn't mean there won't be one. Doesn't mean the Colts still aren't involved and very interested in Justin Simmons. I know for a fact they still are interested in Justin Simmons. And then, everything that just happened on Wednesday with your starting free safety and then how he responded to that. I mean, if I was the general manager, I think I'd be pushing a little bit harder to see if we can get Justin Simmons and his all-pro talent here in town, so we don't have to kind of worry about stunts like that. But we'll have to see. I don't know if I think that the Colts have a better probability to sign him, a less probability to sign him. I think I'm kind of, in my opinion, Drake, I'm kind of just still where I was on Tuesday. I think that eventually this probably gets done, and if not, those three words that I've been saying: roster building malpractice.
Yeah, and it's hard because I think Wyatt's mentioned this a bunch. Andrew has mentioned this a bunch on our show, is that you do have to get the approval from the player too, because of course the team wants him, right? I mean, good God, but it's kind of like Ben Albright said, who is an incredibly reliable source, especially to the Denver Broncos. He's like this with those guys over there in Mile High. And he was like, the guys had at least a dozen offers. That's over a third of the league, guys. Okay. So the Colts are not just going to go out there and be able to take him away from the rest of the competition. So I think him visiting the Saints is one thing, but I would dare say, man, if he signs with the Colts, you're going to hear barely anything about meetings with him. It sounds so Colts-ish to do this. Just like out of nowhere, 2-year deal for Justin Simmons, Indianapolis Colts. I feel like that's how it would happen, is it would just blindside everybody.
You'd hear a lot of Colts fans who were calling for Ballard's head, probably calling to make Ballard the executive of the year at that point. But hey, that's fans. That's every fan base in a nutshell. That's why they are called fans. And damn it, I was hoping we were gonna get done tonight before Drake May stopped playing, but I guess Drake May only played like 6 plays, and now Bailey Zappi is it. I don't care to watch Bailey Zappi at all. I wanted to see what the third overall pick in the draft was going to do. I'll have to catch the highlights of that. But then our final thing we want to talk about tonight is, because the Colts did place Wesley French on injured reserve, the Colts signed center Ryan Cole to the practice squad, or Cool. I think it's Cole. This is his last name, but Drake, I don't know if I think, in my opinion, again, this is probably just a camp body. I don't think that he's going to seriously contend for a roster spot unless you see another major injury like one to Danny Pinter. But it just adds another piece to the interior of the offensive line for the Colts, and who knows, maybe he'll surprise some people and end up on the Colts practice squad.
Yeah, a signing like that's also good for a guy like Tanner Bortolini and a guy like Danny Pinter. It's like telling them, hey, this guy is literally going to do everything in his power to beat both of you. So, I mean, that's great. I love it when they get these signings, because every time that we talk about these no-name guys that nobody knows about, that guy used to be on the Falcons. I think he's an undrafted rookie, and he is ready to pounce on an opportunity. So
yeah, exactly. We'll do one final question tonight. Landon is asking, are the Colts an immediate playoff team if they sign Justin Simmons? I don't know if I'd go that far, Landon. I don't know if it's an immediate playoff team, because at the end of the day, the safety position, while it has an impact, it's not like you're going out there and signing a number 1 cornerback, or you're going out there and signing a number 1 pass rusher. Do I think Justin Simmons makes this Colts defense better? Absolutely. But do I think it makes them an immediate playoff team? I don't know. In my opinion, I already think the Colts are neck and neck with the Texans for the AFC South crown. Do I think it maybe gives them an edge over the Texans? I think maybe slightly, but I don't know if this makes them an immediate playoff team where the Colts are just going to go and rattle off 12 or 13 wins in their sleep.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to help the coverage for sure. Like, I always go back to those last 2 games. I think that the Raiders were way too close for the talent they had. Yeah. And I think that the Texans cooked the Colts because there was really bad communication at safety. If you plug in Justin Simmons in those situations, I think you're going to win both those games. I mean, you won one of them, but barely. I think you're going to win that one probably more comfortably, and I do think you beat the Texans with a guy like Simmons.
Yeah, I definitely, I wouldn't say maybe an immediate playoff team, but I would say maybe pretty close to an immediate playoff team. Yes, exactly. So, but Drake, at the end of the day, we started off by talking about Josh Downs. It does suck for the Colts that Josh Downs went down. He was having a stellar training camp, but hey, on the bright side, could have been a lot worse, because if it was like a dislocated ankle or a fractured or a broken ankle, you're looking at multiple months that Josh Downs is going to be out. So luckily, it was only a high ankle sprain. But again, the key to kind of maintaining and making sure that high ankle sprain doesn't linger and push well into the regular season is by being smart, not pushing it, and only coming back when Josh Downs feels right and feels 100% healthy. And if he has to miss a game or 2 because of that, I think the trade-off is probably better to have a healthy and effective Josh Downs for 15 out of the 17 games, rather than a Josh Downs that is kind of limping his way through the regular season and is not able to help out this offense to his fullest capability.
Yeah, and he hit the ground running at Mach 10 speed last season. Okay, this dude does not need to play in preseason games. He doesn't need to go out there and be rushed out of the gate. Plus, if you feel comfortable with what you've been using at slot receiver and you feel like, hey, Downs still needs another week going into the regular season, then you could probably still wait. You just don't want to push a high ankle sprain because, holy crap, like you said, the trade-off is just something where you're like, oh my God, you're going to look back on it and go, we should have just sat him.
Exactly. And the chemistry with Anthony Richardson already there. When
Yeah.
Josh Downs is healthy and ready to return, then he can come back and start taking on year 2 with an absolute vengeance. NFL Nerd sending us out on a high note. Thank you so much for the super chat, brother. Really, really appreciate it. I'm in Toronto doing lacrosse next week. See y'all. Well, hey, thanks, brother. We really enjoy all of your support. Hopefully you have a good time. Hopefully you kick some ass in lacrosse, and we'll be seeing you here soon. And that's our show for tonight, guys. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. Special shout out to NFL Nerd and Spooks Hill Joe for our super chats in the evening. And like I said, everyone else that tuned in to talk Colts football with us this evening. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night so you never miss an episode. But if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review so we can continue to reach other Colts fans just like you. And while you're at it, go ahead and head on over to horseshoehuddle.com to read Drake and I's written work as well as our other colleagues at horseshoehuddle.com. Drake, tell the people what you've got out there right now that they need to go check out.
So just a lot of coverage, man. A lot of coverage just on what a lot of analysts think about Anthony Richardson, the Colts offensive line. There's just so much hype behind this team. Also, I'm upset with Andrew Moore because we did not say, and this is something else I covered in one of my pieces, we did not talk about the retirement of Colts legend.
We didn't.
Nick Foles.
We didn't.
but it's okay. He had 4 interceptions, no touchdowns in his 2022 season. He retired. That's the last team he played for, sadly. But go read about Nick Foles' retirement in my piece if you want.
I think Nick Foles wants to forget about his time in Indianapolis.
It's his last team.
Let's be honest. Nick Foles was just god awful with the Indianapolis Colts.
I think he was done.
He didn't even want to be here once Frank Reich was out of the picture. But yeah, go check out Drake's pieces. For myself, obviously got that piece out on Nick Cross and his lack of remorse for the Josh Downs injury. That's created quite the stir on social media today. Really fun one to write. So go check it out. Let me know your thoughts and where you stand on the Josh Downs, Nick Cross situation. Always love to hear Colts fans' opinions. And then tomorrow I will have a piece out going a little bit deeper into the position battles that I am going to be watching this weekend when the Colts take on the Denver Broncos. So make sure to check that out. And like I said, everyone else, all of their written work on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to break down the Colts' first preseason game against the Denver Broncos and everything that we learned from the opener. Should be a lot of fun. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and enjoy Colts football being back and in full swing. We'll be seeing you on Monday.